All right, welcome everybody to our Co-Creators Convergence Thursday call. And today is Thursday, March 4th. We're very excited to be gathering here in the wonderful world of Zoom. And Co-Creators Convergence is, well, let me introduce myself first. My name is Karen, and I'm a member of Co-Creators Convergence. I'm a family coach with Surf in Your Soul. And I'm very passionate about fostering the soul path of human beings. So that's why I'm here as a part of Co-Creators Convergence. I've been able to, for the past 5-6 months, be a part of hosting these Thursday calls with Bob and Noelle. And several of the participants on the call now have been our conversationalists, and they have, shared their gifts. And Co-Creators Convergence is a legacy to Barbara Marx Hubbard. And we gather, there's this one line that I love, I don't want to mess it up, so I'm going to read it. And we're dedicated to giving our unique gift to the shift in humanity so as to co-create a world that works for everybody. And that was just a core of Barbara Marx Hubbard's message. So what happens on these Thursday calls is we invite people to come on in, and we get to hear a little bit about 1 or 2 or 3 of their gifts that they are offering to our world. So if you want to hear more about Co-Creators Convergence, we're going to be putting information, ways you can participate. We'll put that in the chat. And we really encourage you to share, to become part of the group. I know for me, the moment I stepped into Co-Creators Convergence, it was just like stepping into my family. So tonight, I have the honor of introducing our guest, Patrick Heffernan. And oftentimes when I introduce guests, I will go ahead and just look at, look at how they see themselves, how they share who they are. So I'm just going to read a little bit about Patrick on his new website, which is patrickyoga.com. And when Patrick is answering this question of who am I, he says that more and more in answering that, I use the phrase, I am divinity, having a human experience. Patrick also says, I live in a white body. I grew up in middle-class home in Mission Viejo. I came out as a gay in high school, but probably more so identify as queer at this stage of my life. I use the pronouns he, him, and his. I moved to New York City in 2011, called Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan my home since 2016. And the role that he holds closest to the heart as to who he is a healer. And he believes that healing is best defined as the process of becoming whole again. He says, I think healing is a lifelong process. I believe that we can heal ourselves, and I believe that we can heal each other. So that's the formal introduction for Patrick. And for those of you who may not know, the reason that our guest tonight is so near and dear to my heart is because he's my firstborn son. I've known him since the moment he was a speck on this planet. And it just blesses my heart and expands my heart that now at age, help me out, 32. Patrick is, I believe, 32 years old. That he has developed into this phenomenal human being. And I've got to see so many sides of his soul this past year. He has helped me tremendously this past year in my own healing process. And so Noelle's going to help me out here, because one of the things I'm excited about that you'll get to learn about Patrick tonight is he's going to share with you what he's talking about. But I marvel every day, and not just with Patrick, but I'm blessed to have 3 other sons. I think a couple of them may be on this call. And it's a miracle. And I wonder how Patrick got from this stage, and Noelle's going to show us this, from this little bundle of DNA and molecules and magnificent light, which the light has always been there and continues to expand, to, let's see, scrolling down, Noelle?
You have 2 more.
To this young man that we're going to be listening to tonight.
Doing handstands in the snow.
And this last one says it all. A jubilant life force.
Yes,
So embracing
that's
life.
it right there.
That's
and I
it.
think what's so wonderful is that how Patrick is doing this right here in these last two pictures is what we're going to be getting a glimpse into tonight, how we can also live with this same pure vitality and joy and light. So with that, Patrick, I love you, and I hand it over to you.
Wow. Well, thank you for that introduction. I think it's probably one of the best introductions I've ever received for a group. I just would love to invite us to center for a moment. And that's going to look different for each of us. So if you'd like to close your eyes, you're welcome to close your eyes, but really just an opportunity to land in your body. Land in this moment with a deeper breath or two. Noticing what is present for you here. For example, I just feel a ton of energy in my body, a lot of my solar plexus, a lot of excitement, a little bit of nervousness. And that's me as the presenter, but each of us are individuals. So invitation here to welcome in and just check in with what's feeling present for you. It might be a mood. It might be a thought sensation. It might be some physical sensation. I'll just hold another 15 to 20 seconds here for us to be present with what is. Slowly transitioning back to the screen in a way that feels, good for you. So welcome, welcome. I just have a big smile across my face to have the opportunity to be here with you all and to receive that really, really just not only gracious and heartfelt introduction, but quite appropriate for what we're going to be discussing tonight. Dinacharya, this idea of finding habits and ways of being that are aligned with the natural rhythms that exist in the world that we live in, aligned with nature's rhythms. And it's interesting, like the way that Mom, you chose to show all those different pictures of me, kind of the progression of my identity, really, my identity as in physical form, but also it was like pretty clear to me that I was going through some very different stages of identity, emotionally or mentally in those photos as well. And also how you brought it back to the bio that I have on my website. It all really speaks to and points to, for me, this idea of identity evolution. And that in this idea, this statement that I believe that I am divinity, I believe that I am spirit taking human form, it's inside of that is the idea that the identity evolution is ongoing and will be ongoing for the rest of my life. And I think that's really kind of like synonymous with the healing journey. Like I will be healing for the rest of my life. I will be becoming whole again for the rest of my life, because this human form will never be my full wholeness, right? It's just divinity contracted, right? It's consciousness in contracted form of a human body, a human mind. I'm coming more and more to think about this in this way. It's been really nice to see it reflected through many different spiritual and religious paradigms as well, is that there is something that exists beyond just this material world. And the way that we can speak about that is by using words like spirit, by using words like source and God and Lord and Jesus Christ and Krishna and Allah and Buddha and universe, right? So yeah, thank you for the introduction. And I'll go ahead and share my screen now and begin a little presentation on Dinacharya. Alrighty, so the presentation is called Dinacharya, Aligning Human Habits with Nature's Rhythms. So Dinacharya it's really just that, and it exists inside of this larger framework of a system called Ayurveda. And Ayurveda comes from like Vedic literature, so from the same lineage that we get yoga, from Eastern philosophy. And it means just what it says right there. It is the study and the science of life. And Ayurveda is considered by many scholars to be the oldest healing science. So it would be called like an alternative form of medicine these days. But it's kind of like the OG, like the original form of healing and medicine that existed. The word Ayurveda is a Sanskrit word, and we'll have a few more. Like Dinacharya is also a Sanskrit word. One of the cool things about Sanskrit, it's like one of the oldest known languages, and so it most closely resembles the sounds of nature. So it's very powerful to speak Sanskrit sounds. The meaning of the word is carried in the vibration. And for much of Ayurveda's life, like thousands and thousands of years, it was a tradition that was passed down orally. So there was nothing written, nothing codified, just passed down from one master to the next. So I have a little quote here from Vasant Lad, who is like a leading doctor and practitioner of Ayurveda and really responsible for like bringing it and educating practitioners in the West. I'd just like to read this, that Ayurveda places great emphasis on prevention, and it encourages maintenance of health through close attention to balance in one's life. So Ayurveda is all about balance, balance in one's life, and right thinking, and diet, and lifestyle, and also the use of herbs. So knowledge of Ayurveda enables one to understand how to create this balance of body, mind, and consciousness according to one's own individual constitution, and how to make lifestyle changes to bring about and maintain this balance. So just as I was speaking to before, like when we had that centering moment, every one of us is going to be arriving in this moment in a slightly different way, because we're all individuals. We've all had different days. We all have, one of the phrases that I have a teacher, he uses, we all have different biographies and we all have different biologies. So he goes on to say, just as everyone has a unique fingerprint, each person has a particular pattern of energy, an individual combination of physical, mental, and emotional characteristics, which comprises their own constitution. And this constitution is determined at conception by a number of different factors. So the game is balance, basically. Like, and balance can be disturbed, as we likely all know. We've either fallen over, like literally, physically tripped and lost our balance, or sometimes we experience imbalance that exists in our mind. We experience an imbalance in our emotions. And there are many factors, both internal and external, that can disturb balance. And these factors they're reflected then as a change in one's constitution from the balanced state. And that can be looked at very literally as like, goofy upright versus goofy, in more of a horizontal position, like falling to the floor. So what is the change in the constitution of a balanced state? Some of the factors that can shift our balance are our emotional state, diet and our food choices, seasons and weather. So it's not always things that we're even fully in control over, right? Physical or emotional trauma, work, family, relationships, all of these things can affect our state of balance. So on one side, I have here that, there's balance, there's health, there's order, there's ease. And the opposite, it's very straightforward. It's imbalance, it's sickness, it is disorder. And the thing is, like, almost anything can be a variable in affecting balance. And once these factors can be understood, I'll go back to this one. Once these factors here, once we have a better understanding of, how they affect us, as individuals, we can start to take appropriate action to really like nullify or minimize the effects that these factors have on our balance. When I teach yoga, and if anybody has ever had a yoga practice, or just like if we all did this learning how to walk, right? We had to learn how to balance. And so I'm thinking now of like what it would be like for you to stand on 2 feet. Arguably, doable, easy to maintain balance standing on 2 feet. But as you shift to 1 foot, the balance becomes a little harder. And you have to start to compensate. I kind of use my arms, I maybe touch the wall to keep balance. And what I do in yoga classes is I intentionally introduce things that makes balance harder so that we can build better balance, right? We can learn how the factors, we intentionally introduce the factors that are going to make it more challenging to balance, so that those factors then have less impact over us and on our balance. And it's why yoga asana is such a beautiful metaphor for figuring out how to live off the mat and maintain a state of equilibrium and balance in your own life. Alrighty, so really the idea behind this one is like balance is the natural order. Like we want to be balanced. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but like my assumption, I'm just going to make a broad strokes assumption, is that we want balance. We don't want imbalance. Imbalance is disorder, health is order, and disease is disorder. So within the body, there's a constant interaction between order and disorder, because like shit happens, life happens. We're gonna end up having to face some sort of disorder. How do we then respond to it is how we can think about living, healthily. And that's where we get to Dinacharya, finally, like the topic of this whole talk. Dinacharya means to follow the rhythm of the day. And it is a concept in Ayurvedic medicine that looks at the cycles of nature, and it bases daily activities around these cycles. So Ayurveda contends that it's the routines, it's the habits, and it's the patterns that can help establish balance. And that understanding these daily cycles can be really useful for promoting health and ease in the body. And I don't even know if this is like me going out on a limb or not, but like I think we're at a little bit of a crisis, in the current day and age for things like health and ease in the body. And just speaking personally, like I've noticed that there is a challenge to maintaining health and ease in the body. And the best way to address that challenge is by addressing my habits, right? I'm sorry, I have to go close my door because my dog is like freaking out and it's a little distracting. So just give me 1 second.
Dogs love Zoom. Cats
Dogs love Zoom. Yeah. Well, and this is just me noticing that, like, okay, this is throwing off my balance. So I need to address that. So I will pause here in a moment. I have a few more slides that I want to continue to talk, but I just want to give, an opportunity for people to respond as they'd like to, if there's anything that folks would want to respond to, but just 1 or 2 more points on this idea of Dinacharya. I'll throw up this slide too for the etymology of the word, another Sanskrit word. So the daily, right, day or daily, chas, to walk forward, to move through life. Like we do have to move, right? We're not just going to stay in our beds all day. And acharya is a word for like a master. Reading through the texts of the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Bhagavat Puran, you'll see acharya a lot. And we've sort of lost, or it's really shifted this idea of like guru culture, and not in a bad way necessarily. It's new. It feels to me that it's more horizontal. The learning is more shared. It seems to me that this group probably does a really good job of addressing that and like really welcoming everybody into the conversation with equity, because this like vertical top-down structure of leadership and learning, I don't think it serves us so much anymore. We kind of want to acknowledge our oneness, right? Acknowledge our unity and be in learning together, and know that every single one of us has something of value to offer as a teacher. There is acharya in each of us. So, but the acharya in this case is the day, is the rhythm of the day, the way that the sun rises, the way that the sun sets in the evening, the way that there is a fiery kind of productive time during the day, and the way that during the day there is a time for rest and there is a time for sleep. And the cool thing is, like, we see these things reflected again in many different traditions. Bible verses speak very directly about these same things. Acharya, practiced wisdom through routine. And it's just this word routine, like, we all have routines, we all have habits, we all have patterns and cycles. Life is really just a series of patterns and cycles and rhythms. I was just having a conversation with somebody about this in terms of language, that language is just a pattern of me having made an association of meaning to an object or a thing or a sensation or a feeling. And then there's a patterning that happens of how I kind of identify what that object or that sensation is based on the word that I learned for it. And then I move that through into my expression. And there's a pattern. And sometimes that pattern is not in a state of balance, right? It's not in the state of balance that we're seeking it to be. So for example, if I was feeling exorbitantly nervous for this presentation, I could go to a public speaking class or something and address that idea of balance. So it's really cool to me, and I'm such a big advocate for the idea that, like, yes, we operate under the patterns regardless, but the cool thing about being a human being is that we can be in choice as individuals about which patterns we operate under and which rhythms that we want to use. Like, that is how we've gotten so far as humans, that we've taken control over the rhythms that we want to integrate and implement into our lives. And we've built amazing things. We've created amazing art. But unfortunately, we've in many ways devolved, and that's reflected a lot, whether we want to look at that through this lens of social justice, whether we want to look at it through a lens of income inequality, poverty, homelessness, all the kind of terrible things that plague us as humanity, right? Humanitarian crisis, genocide. There are things that are severely out of balance. And so I'm getting a little bit micro macro, right? Dinacharya is much more micro in that sense. It's about addressing the rhythms and the patterns, but I'm just speaking to the idea, and it's also micro macro, that we can be in choice over the world that we want to live in. So that being said, I'm going to pause here and just take a breath and see, if there's anything that anybody wants to respond to so far. And this can be very free form. If you want to just throw your mute off and share, ask a question. I may not be able to answer it, but I will do my best. Yeah, I do have a few more slides, but I just want to pause for a moment and see if anybody has anything that they'd like to respond to or speak into the space.
Patrick,
Yeah.
This is Bob. As you were talking about routine and talking about pattern through the day, pattern through the day. Can you say anything about individuals or collectively, or as a pattern through evolution, people that have more energy in the morning, or people call themselves a night owl, or people call themselves a morning person? Is that where does that fit into this picture of these ancient teachings?
In terms of Dinacharya, like, there's no such thing as a night owl. That's going to be the case that they make. It's like being a night owl is something that has been habituated into humans because of this kind of need to be either overly productive or overly stimulated past the waking hours of the day. That's how Dinacharya would put it. And I'm very, very close to people who are straight up night owls. They stay up all the way till 4 a.m. and then they sleep until 11 or 12, and they're healthy, beautiful, productive, creative people. So it's not really for me to say that doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for me. I've just really noticed that, and there are a few other ways to start speaking about this in terms of like each of our individual constitutions and the energies that make us up, Pitta, Vata, Kapha. I'm not going to get into all that for this talk, but that's kind of very kind of bare bones Ayurveda, those energies. You may have heard some of those terms before. But yeah, the night owl thing, and it's interesting, I think some people also shift into the night because they feel it's the only time they can be alone. They don't have that independence that they're seeking. And one of the beautiful things about Dinacharya is it gives you that time, but it puts it in the morning. It puts it in the early hours before dawn. And so I'll get into this in the next couple of slides, but like one of the habits of Dinacharya is to rise before the sun and to start the day early. Yes, Zachary.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying your workshop. This is a different way to look at things because most practices are written in stone. You know, all the revealed religions are, you know, this is right, this is wrong, every day. And you're bringing a concept to the table that says, well, you're a human being. There are some days where you might be on, and there's some days you're not going to put the same expectations on yourself. And realize that you have to pace yourself and get in the rhythm, put your rhythms in rhythm with life. I like that concept. And it's really reflecting what's going on in society today. We need new ways of looking at things and approaching things. And for example, in school, kids are expected to act a certain way every day, but we don't feel the same every day. So we need some kind of method that will adapt to us being human beings. And your thinking is really opening things up, and I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm gonna listen to the rest of what you got to say. I'm learning a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, because it really is, it's like so much of this work for me, and really how this work fits into my life, I didn't really say this, is like what I do is I lead people through implementing and automating these habits into their lives. And I do it in a group setting. So like we get to, if you've ever had a bad habit, you know, you might know that it's hard to break. And the thing about habit science is like, they say that you don't really break a bad habit. You just implement a better, healthier habit. I think about this in terms of like, you know, you've been doing the same commute from your home to your workplace for, you know, 3 years. It's a 40-minute commute. And, you know, 3 years in, somebody tells you, actually, if you turn left here, you can cut your commute in half. You're like, what? I never knew that, you know? So you start taking the new route, right? The old route is still there, right? And there's going to be times that you might go down that old route for whatever reason. But yeah, the idea is like, you don't get rid of a bad habit. You replace that habit. And so the reason that I'm saying that is because it puts an emphasis, I think, on experimentation and measurement. So it's very easy to lead by telling people what to do. And I kind of heard this in your share, Zachary, is like the hard, cold rules that are written in stone. It's very easy to lead by telling somebody what to do. But when there's an emphasis put on experimentation and measurement, right, of one's own experience, it can be a hugely empowering thing. And so yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and that's what came up for me when I heard you speak that.
Great.
I think Elliot, you had a comment you wanted to make. You could unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, Patrick. I've been enjoying every minute. It's just, you know, I find it riveting. And especially your presentation of it, your energy, your clarity. I guess one of the things that really struck me was you mentioned very quickly in passing something about Bible passages and stuff. I'm always interested in spiritual growth, so I wondered if the Bible passages or if the Ayurvedic patterns that we can have as new habits or something might be related to spiritual growth. I guess I'll leave it at that. I have a lot of questions, but I'll leave it at that.
It's absolutely related to spiritual growth, in my opinion. And one of the slides that I've conducted kind of gets into this a little bit, but Vedic wisdom will tell us that there are 5 layers to our body, right? That actually says that we have 5 bodies, right? We think we have one body, you know. Vedic literature says that we have 5 bodies, and the outermost body that we have is the physical body. The next body down is the breath body. It's called the pranamaya kosha. In yoga, we use this term prana as energy. The body below that is the mind body, the manomaya kosha. So really interesting that like it's the physical, the breath, and then the mind. So the breath is the bridge that connects the mind to the body. The mind body isn't always on the same page. You know, sometimes the mind is over here, the body's over here. Sometimes the body's, you know, it's not always on the same page, but it's the breath that unites the mind to the body. Underneath the mind body is a body of awareness. And underneath that body is the anandamaya kosha, the body of bliss. And it is the essence. It is the thing that is closest to our soul. That is bliss. And I don't think I live in a world where I just immediately see and experience bliss everywhere that I go. It's a framework that I have to re-implement and teach myself to know that bliss exists in me. And bliss is something that I associate with divinity. You know, I associate with spirit. So yeah, there are habits that encourage identity evolution. And it's that question of like, what identity am I evolving towards? And is it, the cool thing about identity evolution is like, you pick the identity, you pick the person that you want to be. You want to make a change in your life, you start to automate the habits, implement the habits that are going to support that change that you want to make in your life. And oftentimes these changes, they're tethered to things like our deepest dreams, our deepest desires, our deepest goals, the things that we want in life. So I'm very interested in like holding space for that conversation, because I think we need it. Yeah, I really think we need it. So thank you for that contribution.
I know, Patrick, one thing I wanted
yes.
to share, I think you said that Chara is practiced wisdom through routine.
Yeah.
And so I'm 55 years old. I've never mastered the art of habits and routine, despite the fact that by the time I was born, throughout my life, that my mom and dad had phenomenal routines. And and when you had all those definitions up, I could see all these things about my mom and dad. And I want to take a moment. I don't know if they want to turn their screen on, but I do want to share with you all here that, you know, Patrick wouldn't be here without my mom and dad, and they're on the call right now. So I don't know, Phyllis and Bob, if you guys want to put your screen on or not. But my 90-year-old parents, well, at least my mom's 90, my dad's soon to be, and I'm really, it kind of, I mean, I get a lot done. I mean, Noelle even knows this about me, in a scattered way. And I'm really looking forward to, I know that Patrick is launching a year-long program. I don't know if it's starting in March or April of this entire practice. And despite the fact that my mom pretty much did everything she could to teach me great routines and habits, I watched my dad pretty much since I was 12 years old get up every morning and go run. And to this day, he doesn't do it in the morning now, but every afternoon, 6 days a week, walks 2 miles a day. And yet I never just naturally groomed and developed these habits. So I'm looking forward to, there's something about this that just feels like really being in alignment with the rhythms of nature. And I feel like when I can do that, it will actually excel, you know, what I have to offer to the world.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially with that last statement. Thank you. And hi, Grandma and Grandpa. Yeah, Jesse.
Okay, I was just gonna say I'm learning a lot. Thank you, and I'm really excited for your course, because I think consistency is what I struggle with. Because I know I wrote down, you know, think about the habits that encourage your identity evolution and which ones you want. So I just have a question. Like, I'm sure you're gonna say probably willpower, which I probably need to develop a little bit stronger. But I seem to get some great healthy habits formed. Like, I switched my diet. I was eating super clean for months. But if I take a break, or even the early morning, like rising early, if I take one day off, I just like fall off for a while. It's really hard for me to get back on. Do you think you just like shorten your break so that the routine doesn't you know, die? Because I think stopping completely is it's so hard to like get the momentum to pick back up again. It feels like you have to start all over. I know it's a lifelong practice, but what are your tips? Because that's what I gotta get better at.
All right, so excuse me, because in the next room is a book that has a quote that is just like so perfect for the to respond. So I'm gonna grab it really fast, and I wouldn't do this if it wasn't so appropriate. Hi, Mac.
Jesse,
love
I
it.
relate to the starting and stopping.
I love a good quote too, so I know this is gonna just stick in my head as soon as I hear it.
Jesse, we've never
As
had
soon as
anybody
you hear this
scared the
quote-
presenter away.
I, you
As
know,
soon as
have that effect on Patrick. I'm just kidding.
One thing I can tell you for sure, after Patrick reads this quote, tomorrow, if you go to Soul Made Goods, we're going to see it wood burned into a piece of wood that Jesse's made.
Honestly, probably, or watercolor version, one or the other.
So this is really interesting because this was written in 1890. William James, he has a book called Habit, and it's a fairly easy read. But I just love that they were like, thinking about this kind of stuff. Of course they were. But so yeah, 1890, William James, Habit. Never suffer an exception to occur till the new habit is securely rooted in your life. Each lapse is like the letting fall of a ball of string, which one is carefully winding up. A single slip undoes more than a great many turns will wind again. Continuity of training is the means of making the nervous system act infallibly right. So I'm happy to share that in the group later on, so you can have the text of it. And it honestly doesn't answer your question, it just affirms your question, right? That yes, you are right. Like when there's a slip, like that ball of yarn thing, it's like, oh, I've been like, it took me so long to do this, and it unraveled so quickly, right? And that's the nature of the work that I do. Is these habit automation can take a long time. I mean, when you think about how long it took you to learn how to walk, that's patterning. Walking is simply patterning, and how long it took you. But there are ways, and there are things. There's the idea of a habit loop. So when you're working to integrate a new habit, you first notice the trigger for the thing that you either kind of would lapse into that would make you break the habit. You notice the trigger for the bad habit, I guess is what it is. You notice the trigger, you replace the habit with a good one, and then you reward. So it's sort of a three-part thing. What's the trigger? Replace the habit, and then reward. And that reward could be like, hey, good job, Jesse. Good job for doing that. Like touch your hands to your heart center and do a self-congratulations. There's some really cool research and science coming out behind the power of self-reward from a neurological perspective. That like when we can do self-reward, it actually releases dopamine. The brain releases this chemical of dopamine in our brains. People like use cocaine to get dopamine. That's how good dopamine is. We can give it to ourselves by doing something like a self-reward. So it's something I do all the time now in a yoga practice. If I'm holding a pose a little longer, if I'm even just in this moment, I can sit here and say, wow, Patrick, great job in this presentation so far. You're doing a great job. Dopamine then energizes me, to continue doing a great job, to continue moving towards the thing that is challenging. So it gets right back to that thing of like, there is challenge wrapped up in all of this. Automating these habits in a dynamic group setting helps. If you want to try to get something new into your life, if you're in a group of people who are also trying to get that thing into their lives, you're going to get it faster. And I've spent my life doing this. Like I'm an actor. They don't teach us all individually, like what the steps are. And then we come together, right? They teach us all together in a room, right? We learn as a group, and then we can kind of ask each other, what was that step? What was that step? So we do it together. So the group setting is a big part of it too.
I'm just going to tag on to that, is that I always wanted to have a meditation practice, but it just seemed like it. We lived in our RV for 10 years and traveled all the time. So I always found an excuse that, why I wasn't able to do it. But since COVID started, a good friend of ours in the CCC group, Jennifer Ivanko, she started a online Zoom meditation group in the morning. And Bob and I have been there, we have a solid core of people that were there every day. And if it weren't for that group, I'm sure I would have found other things to do at 7:30 in the morning, versus taking that time and saying, okay, this is good for me. So I totally agree with that. I'm also going to say here that Tex from Montreal has put in the chat here, wonderful and inspiring intergenerational presence. Thanks, Karen, parents and son, especially Patrick. So getting back to something Karen said about how she didn't find she had routines, I have this theory that sometimes these kind of things skip generations. So your parents obviously had it. Patrick, you obviously have it. And Karen, you know,
too bad.
You have other gifts.
Yeah, other gifts.
Other gifts that we love so much.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents. Back to you, Patrick.
Yeah. The generational transfer is really, really very interesting. We could do a whole talk just on that. But let me go ahead and share the screen and give the kind of second half of the presentation. And, you know, maybe once I actually let you know like what Dinacharya is and what these habits are, you might have some second thoughts about whether or not how much you like this presentation. No, I'm halfway teasing. So let's see here. Is it this one? Are you seeing the presentation now? It's the tabs that really get me.
Not yet. Now we are.
Yeah. Okay, great. So this quote rocked my world. It's not obstacles that prevent us from reaching our goal. Excuse the typo there. It is a clear path to a lesser goal. So it addresses Jesse's question. It addresses, I think, what you're speaking to, Mom. It addresses, you know, my daily challenge of kind of moving towards my higher goal and being able to listen in and make the decisions that I know are really going to support me. And inside of that, really support the communities and the spaces that I'm in. So it's not obstacles that prevent us from reaching our goal. It's a clear path to a lesser goal, you know? I'll just let that speak for itself and not try to say any more on that. Oops, sorry. Okay, so moving on. This is a book called Body Thrive. I want to see if I've missed anything. I don't think I have. Yeah, we kind of just left off sharing around the idea that there is routine, right? There is rhythm. And the cool thing about Dinacharya is that the rhythm has already been established. We just get to follow the lead of nature's rhythms, right? So we don't so much have to architect these things for ourselves. So in her book called Body Thrive, Kate Stillman, who is an Ayurvedic practitioner and thought leader that I follow and I'm training with, she does a great job of just like kind of making ancient Ayurvedic wisdom accessible and sort of palatable to contemporary and modern practitioners. So I want to read this. Ayurveda is based on living in sync. In Ayurveda, the synchronized daily bodily rhythms are called Dinacharya, which means following the rhythm of the day. Isn't that lovely? You get to follow. No need to lead. Nature isn't just on your side, but she's got your back. When you synchronize your bodily rhythms to nature's clock, your physiology harmonizes. You experience balance, ease, and flow. When you live against nature's body clock, you experience stress, rapid aging, and disease. Yeah, I mean, I love following the lead. I kind of love being told what to do, you know, especially when it comes to it's like working with others, you know, I love kind of just having a tone established in a way. And this is the way that I'm seeing like the communion of my communion in a way with the tone that nature has set. So these are the 10 habits. She calls these the 10 body habits for Thrive. It's really just her way of synthesizing and characterizing Dinacharya. And so these are the habits that I'm working on implementing in my life right now. Some come easier than others. Number one is an earlier, lighter dinner. So it's the idea of eating dinner before like 6:30 p.m. So that way your digestion really has a chance. We're trying to create space. Like there's a big issue with inflammation in the whole world right now. It's chronic and systemic inflammation is one of the things that is like the leading cause of many, many different diseases, from heart disease to cancer to respiratory disease to obesity. It's inflammation. And inflammation occurs when there's not enough space in the body, right? So if there's too much inside and we keep putting more inside, the body doesn't have a chance to process, to digest. And then inflammation happens, and disease happens. So it's why these habits, they promote health. It's not just a feel-good thing. It is a feel-good thing. It's a win-win, right? The health and balance. Okay, number 2 is early to bed. So I'll just share personally. Like right now, I'm trying to be in bed in like 6 minutes. No, on some days, yes, I do go to bed at 9 p.m. Definitely before 11, if I can. And one of the cool things that I'll share with you about like the way that I approach these habits is that I go for a solid B-. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to get 110% on these things. I go for the B-, and that gives me some flexibility and some freedom to still sort of maintain, I don't know, either old habits or just to respond like to the moment. Like if I have friends coming over, if I want to go see a friend, if someoe's cooking for me and it's past 6:30 p.m., I'm not going to be like, no, I'm not eating. It's just not something that I feel would resonate with me. So going for the B-. Okay, habit number 3, start the day right. Early to bed, early to rise makes a woman healthy, wealthy, and wise. Here we go, night owls, beware. You will age faster and fatter than you want. So the suggestion here is to wake up before the dawn, wake up before the sun, hydrate with up to a quart of water or warm water, and poop. The idea of eliminating first thing in the morning could be a really healthy thing for the digestive system. The next habit would be a breath body practice. So anything that gets your heart rate up, anything that uses both the breath and the body, yoga definitely would fill that criteria. Going for a walk, going for a run. Number 5 is a plant-based diet. And I like that she says here, like, I didn't say raw vegan, I said plant-based. Eat more plants and you'll feel more alive. Eat more plants that grow in your hood and you'll feel more connected in general. So like plant-based is not just about being vegetarian, but it's about eating locally. And that can really have an effect because it's the same environment that you're living, right? The same air that you're breathing, those plants are interacting with that same ecosystem. Number 6 is self-massage. This one's just been profound for me. So every day I do a little self-massage, whether it's just with my hands, without oil. I use sunflower oil to do the massage as well. Or there's a thing called the dry brush that you could take to your skin, and it's really great for your lymphatic system, really good for circulation, apparently really good for cellulitis, all these different things. Number 7, sitting in silence. Noelle spoke to that a little bit about working that meditation practice in. And honestly, again, it's processing. It's digestion of what's in the mind. In the same way that we put food into our bodies, we take content into our minds all day. And in this day and age, March 4th, 2021, arguably we're taking in more than we ever have taken in before in the history of humanity, right? Because we do more, more. In terms of consumerism, in terms of technology, in terms of entertainment, media, and it's like it's not wrong. This idea of more is not wrong. Fundamentally, the natural law of the universe is that we are in a state of expanse. We are in a state of growth and more, right? The universe is not contracting. The universe is expanding. But I think we're a little misaligned as a culture right now in the ways in which we're expanding. It's far more an egoic expansion. Eckhart Tolle really gets into this in his books, A New Earth, and The Power of Now. The opportunity for expanse should shift to an expanse for awareness, for consciousness, an expansive consciousness, an expansive unity, an expansiveness of togetherness, right? Of peace and joy and love and all these things, right? That's, I think, the shift of expanse that we want. So all of that to say, sitting in silence is an opportunity to process and to digest and to not take in. So the mind has a digestive process in the same way that the gut has a digestive process. Speaking of the gut, we have healthier eating guidelines. Number 9 is coming to your senses. So doing things like scraping your tongue, putting oil in your ears, just really like hygiene of the senses. And then the last one is called easeful living. And it's like, once all these other habits are automated, it really promotes this state of easeful living, moving through one's experience, living in one's body with a state of ease. That can be a really powerful and profound thing that I think many times we just sort of, we reserve for like spiritual leaders and teachers and people like, oh, the priests and they're the gurus, they're the ones who can do the easeful living. It's I'm just a regular human. All of us can have that, all of us can have easeful living, and that's what these habits I think really promote. So those are the 10 habits of Dinacharya, and it's not like a 10 commit set in stone kind of thing. This is the way that Kate has synthesized them and she teaches them. And but yeah, any feedback, any responses around some of these habits? What's coming up for people? Yes, Zachary.
Well, your habits are definitely reflected in your aura. I remember the first time I met you, you were at your mom's seminar, and there was definitely a light around you and your brothers. And I mentioned that to her. Now I understand why. It's your habits. There is something to having habits. It is reflected in the way we carry ourselves and the way we reflect ourselves in the world. So I can understand why your mother is so very proud of you. And we're all proud of the work you're doing and the contribution you're making for the healing of our society that needs it so desperately. What you're doing is needed desperately, and we appreciate it. Just want you to keep on.
Thank you. Yeah, it makes me think of Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So it's cool to hear that some of that light is being reflected back. I appreciate that. Elliot, yeah, I saw your hand was up.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you might be able to connect the dots for me. Earlier, you were saying something about we can choose our identity, and we can choose the patterns that are going to support that identity. Now I'm looking at this list of 10 things, and I'm just wondering how these 10 things, what one or two of them might play into that.
Yeah. So I guess I can speak from my experience. Try to think of an example here. So we got a little bit in this idea of like, are we divinity? Are we spirit at the essence? And it's not my place to tell anybody else who they are. I think everybody's divinity, but each of us, I think, is up to us to arrive at that conclusion. For example, in the early hours of the day, the yogis call that time the Brahma Muhurt. Brahma is God, and Muhurt is like the hour or the time. So it's the time of God in those early hours of the day. And who is God but the creator? And so if I can be up in those early hours of the day and align myself in this hour of God, align myself with my own creative capacities, it's the time when, like, even neurologically speaking, connectivity and circuitry that's existing in the brain is more like ripe in a way. It's easier to access. So for me, like, I find the creative juices and sort of the way that I can receive like inspiration and generate inspiration, it comes very intuitively in the morning. Like, the morning hour feels really magical to me, that hour before the sun comes up. And so just touching base in terms of like just creating the identity of who I want to be, right? That habit really supports that for me. A lot of this comes back to as well, these, not to give you too much like yoga, yoga, Sanskrit and all this stuff, comes back to the koshas, the 5 layers that encase our soul. And if I want to be able to be in touch as much with my body, as with my mind, as with my energy, as with my knowledge, as with my bliss, then I need to have habits that support that. So if there's inflammation in the body, the physical body, the outermost layer, becomes heavy and it crushes the breath body onto them. So the breath body can't circulate then, right? So I don't have as much sense of what they also call is the subtle body. We have gross senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. And we also have subtle senses: intuition, deeper knowing, gut feeling, however you want to think about that. And so the idea of eating an earlier, lighter dinner or eating a plant-based diet, it's going to create less inflammation, less heaviness in my food body and my physical body, therefore facilitating kind of this streamlined connectivity of my energy body to then move directly to my mind, streamlined into my deeper knowledge, streamlined to my bliss, the five koshas. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
That's tremendously helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yes, I see Tex has his hand up.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Especially, I thank you for articulating so well the coherence of healthy living. Now, I embarked on my 65th solar orbit this week, and over the decades, I've learned, maybe intuitively or picking up some good practices here and there. You know, I probably am the generation where we were a bit more mindful to what our parents and grandparents would be saying, especially from where I come. I'm originally from the Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean, and here in Quebec since end of '88. So there is this background, which I'm finding that my children and grandchildren are not necessarily so in touch with this, you see. But being conscious, especially more and more as we see the different difficulties we can have in terms of health and general well-being, I try to maybe convey by mostly trying to lead by example. Although I may pass for being someone who may be a bit dull, for not being so fun, staying up very late and things like that, you know. But by listening to one's body, one gets to, I mean, I've come to these practices, and I'm so happy to hear you this evening articulate it all so well. You know, now I have one expression, Dinacharya, which so I thank you very much. It's very encouraging, and I think we need to have these coherences, you know. I mean, to be able to transmit to each other, you know. And you, I mean, I congratulate you for this life mission in trying to have a more balanced humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that. There really, I think, has been this shift away from honoring the wisdom of an elder generation, right? Especially in the West. We treat our elders differently, I think, now than we kind of would have in previous generations. So I hope that it sounds like I think you said your grandkids, sounds like they have a pretty positive and powerful influence in terms of wisdom in you. So I appreciate that.
If I may add just one little anecdote. My youngest grandson turned 6 last week, and I overnighted with them, and the grandmother also attended. And one of the gifts that he got was a little set of, I think about 6 little plastic eggs that you break and you get these little toys in each, you know, and one of them had some slime. So he was looking for the slime one. He knew what it was all about. But anyway, in the end, he gave individually to the guests, like the grandmother. There was also my eldest daughter was there. Each one a little gift. And to my eldest daughter, who doesn't have children, he gave 2 little figurines, and he said, "You do not have any children, so I'm giving you 2." And he's only 6, eh? And then he came to me and he gave me a mammoth, which is the mammoth from Ice Age. And he says, "This is wise and you are wise." So I'm saying, wow, you know, maybe over the years there's something that has gotten through, you know. So that's the best affirmation I've had in a long time. I mean, it's worth more than a degree. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, thank you so much.
So, Patrick, to be practical, but to learn from this, what you've been teaching us tonight, which I really, really appreciate, and all in the balance and that sort of thing. I'd like to ask a question about how you would apply this in both the beginning and the end of the day. The beginning of the day is sometimes for me, I'm wide awake, and being that I've made a lot of earth circuits also, I might get up multiple times during the middle of the night, but 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden I'm wide awake and I'm not going to go back to sleep. But what's on my mind is how pissed I am about the state legislator from this district and what he said yesterday in the Senate hearing. And I'm writing a letter to him at 4 o'clock in the morning in my head. And my decision is I'm going to get up and do it. First off, it flows very easily and there's less anger in it and whatnot than it would be if I was reacting immediately to when I saw his speech yesterday. But I have in my mind that I need to get up because it's going to bother me all day if I don't do it. And if I do it, then it's out of the way. So here I am at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning writing to a Tennessee state senator. Doesn't feel like I'm spending much time attaching to the divine and watching the sunrise and seeing the beauty of the frost in the moonlight that was out there this morning at 4 o'clock. And so there's the beginning of the day. I don't do that every day because I'm not aware of our state senator doing something that ridiculous every day, although most days in session they do. And my end of the day question is about eating early. That's a great habit. I appreciate what that does and means and what you're talking about, inflammation and that sort of thing. But if we eat early, I find myself wanting to snack for the next 3 hours through the evening. So I don't know what Kate or you have to say about that. So any thoughts that you have to bring it back to the subject of tonight's learning about times of day would be great.
Yeah, thank you. And they're both such like crucial times of day. And one of the things that I really think about is like designing a ritual and designing a routine, end of day, beginning of day. And there's something really precious about a ritual, that kind of the repetitive nature of it. In terms of like hunger pangs, I drink hot water. I'm just like all day sipping hot water, and it really does something kind of wonderful for my belly. Yeah, I never want to encourage people to like, you know, underfeed themselves or to not like, there's something to be said about like listening to the calling of the body, you know, and in terms of when it's asking for food, and there might be a pattern there that wants to be redesigned perhaps. So yeah, the idea of like, one thing Kate talks about is like kitchen's closed. You know what I mean? After this time, kitchen's closed. And she's made some suggestions of like, brush your teeth and floss, you know, after you've had your dessert, and then you're not going to want to, you know, eat. And I haven't needed to do that yet, but to me, the incentive has been the way that I feel the next morning. I just noticed such a clear difference in how I feel the next morning, getting to wake up, eliminate right away, you know. I mean, becoming a pooping champion has been like a really big part of this for me, like, and just like feeling really good about that digestive process in my body and that elimination process. So for the end of the night, there's that. for the beginning of the morning, it's like, I am so selfish in the beginning of the morning. It's all about me. You know, I don't look at my phone until I've at least journaled, you know, taken my shower, done this. I won't respond to any messages or emails. So I really prioritize self in that time. And this can come right back to like self with a lowercase s, self with a capital S. You know, so it is that time to nurture the relationship with the divine in a way. But I do really appreciate your, like, first of all, your recognition of what that moon would be like in the morning at that time, and the awareness of that. But also, like, sounds like you're really in touch with like your willpower and shifting that into action. Writing that letter, I'm envious of that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
On a personal level.
I can really see that the patterns have been very helpful. I don't have any concern about overeating. Noelle, the beloved, has come up with a habit for almost 2 months now where we walk 4 miles a day. And this habit of meditation with the group in the morning is at a specific time. And so those have been really strong anchors for us. And being in the same zip code for 12 straight months is pretty odd for us after 10 years. And so having some of these routines that are self-nurturing. So thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you. I see that
your mom wants to talk.
Yes, my mom has her hand up. Go ahead.
All right, I have a few different thoughts here, so I'm going to go backwards to forwards. Like Bob, you can actually, all of us can go to co-creatorsconvergence.com and find the archives of these Thursday calls. And Bob did a call a few months back because of how you defined yourself, Patrick, you know, earlier when I read from your website. And Bob says something to the effect of, I'm a spiritual, person having a human experience. I'm a spiritual person having a political experience. And so I just invite people to go back and look at that, because Bob and Noelle have been, just such light partners, which is another one of their websites that, in shedding light on religion and culture and politics. So I have a few different points. I wanted to say, I didn't hear in those 10 habits, but I've heard you and I've heard Michael, my son, who's on the line, talk about the cold shower in the morning. So I know there's a part of that. So I'm going to ask you to speak to that. And I do want to bring in, because for me tonight in my business, Surfing Your Soul, my mission is strengthening the heart of family, one soul at a time. And this is one of the core missions, practices of Co-Creators Convergence. Tonight, I'm actually living and realizing my dream as a family coach, having my mom and dad on the line, having my sons here, having me in that bridge in between. And my dad, who will turn 90 in July, his sister will turn 95 in August. Esther Beard, my aunt. Esther, I kind of think maybe there's a day or two now where she passes, but she takes a cold shower every morning. She taught me this. Did I follow the habit? No. She does this cold shower. So Patrick, I'm going to have you mention the cold shower thing after. So I just want to, the other little point I want to make is about unconditional love. And that came up for me when Noelle mentioned skipping a generation of habits. And I think it's so important that we're all on this, we want to be the best person that we can be. And for me as a person, and I think one of my strongest gifts is unconditional love. And it's one of the things I value most. And I see that in Noelle when she says that about me and my parents. I've offered that to my children. And I just really want to honor you, Mom and Dad, because there's 6 of us. And the one thing that my mom and dad modeled 100%, along with my grandparents, is unconditional love. So one of the things that I find, and Zachary mentioned something about the public school system today and how we're teaching our children, one of the things that I'm finding fascinating watching tonight is that my mom and dad raised us as Catholics, and there were beautiful rhythms, and I know Noelle shares this with me. We grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school my whole life, and while there were some core truths in Catholicism and in the message there was also some things that didn't align with me. And what I'm witnessing is Patrick, at your age and your generation, bringing forth these core truths of light and love and unconditional love, yet maybe some of the rules that were man-made, and I will say man-made, not woman-made, that just did not align. So what's so beautiful here tonight is the alchemy of, I can honor what my parents brought to me with the rhythms and the habits and the truths of the church. And I can sort of let go and stand more in my truth about what, some of these rules that really were not honoring people to live in their soul truth. They were more about control and fear. So I just feel like tonight is such a beautiful, again, alchemy of, I know at one point, Patrick, he sort of resisted being on this call, a couple of months back. And then he's like, well, am I wise enough? What do I have to offer? And I was like, we need these young voices. And you said something, Patrick, that I was able to witness in my lifetime, but it's very true that we are not respecting our elders in the way that they deserve to be respected. And I really value how you're bringing that back, and you're not bringing it back, but you're honoring that and reminding us to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so much there. I think really at the heart of each religion is saying the same thing, promoting love, promoting unity, promoting connection. Yeah, it's a in the same way that language is a pattern. These religions are all patterns and routines too. They're a means to an end, in my opinion. So there is a cool Ignatian prayer that I'll share with us, maybe as a closing, that just really resonates with me in terms of how I'm receiving from the universe right now. And yeah, I'll share that with you all. But you mentioned the cold showers thing. I'll speak to that briefly. So I think we'll probably end up ending at 9:30, right? Is that okay? Cool.
Right. So, and we have just a few announcements before. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, the cold exposure thing for me, I feel like Michael kind of introduced it to me in terms of like somebody I knew that was like actually doing it. I'd done them before. It was on my radar. Wim Hof is somebody that you could check out on online. Just Google Wim Hof. He's got a bunch of stuff online. But cold exposure. Okay, so one of the reasons why I take cold showers in the morning, one of the first things that I do is because it in a way sets the bar in terms of what is sensational in my experience as the day moves forward. Okay, so does that make sense? It sets the bar physiologically and psychologically, like on all levels, right? It sets the bar because it's so sensational. And if you want to test out how sensational it is, take a cold shower tomorrow morning, And it teaches my nervous system something about that amount of sensationalism, that amount of sensation being something that isn't going to kill me, right? That isn't going to, so like my nervous system typically isn't used to handling sensation to that degree, right? It usually tells me there's something wrong here. Like my nervous system thinks that there's something wrong if somebody looks at me sideways. And I'm like, oh my God, did I offend this person? My heart starts beating faster. My nervous system tells me that there's something wrong, that I'm in some sort of danger in this moment, giving this presentation as I was nervous coming in, right? The shakes, the jitters. So this is a whole separate conversation about parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, and how we can balance the nervous system to a state of equilibrium that allows us to move into a state of rest and digest. That's the parasympathetic state versus fight or flight, which is a sympathetic state. And the triggers for fight or flight are many right now, right? I think we're being triggered in terms of fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system response at things that don't actually merit that. So we actually kind of end up living in that state, and we don't allow our physiology to balance out that parasympathetic response of rest and digest. So these habits, they do a lot of that balancing out. And so what a cold shower is it's an intentional stressor. It's an intentional stress that I'm bringing to my system to kind of like strengthen my physiology, right? Strengthen my nervous system response. So it's a balancing tool in that way. There's also some interesting research being done around, like, you know, whether or not you shake in a cold shower or whether or not you shiver. Scientist Andrew Huberman out of Stanford, he's a neuroscientist and a really great teaching scientist. I'll put his name in the chat. Andrew Huberman talks about cold exposure being used for either stress inoculation or being used for fat loss. And if you want to use cold exposure for stress inoculation, and people do these things with cryogenic therapies, there's all different ways of cold exposure. If you want to get stress inoculation, you go into the shower and you resist the shiver. You try not to shake when you're in the shower. And you do that through what? Through deep breaths, through singing a song. You do it through whatever you need to do. If you want to do cold exposure for fat loss, you shiver. And I don't know the name of the chemical, but apparently when you do that shivering response, your body releases a chemical and it targets, I'm also not up to date on like all the different types of fat. There's like white fat and this fat and that fat. It targets a specific type of fat, and the chemical then goes ahead and it facilitates fat loss apparently. So the last thing I'll say on cold showers is, for me, it aligns me with the elements as they are, right? It's the cold water that's coming out of that tap. It's not cold water. It's the temperature of the water that is in the pipes. You know what I mean? So in the winter, yeah, it is cold, but it hasn't been treated. It hasn't been, artificially warmed or whatever. So for me, it's an opportunity to rewild. And these habits could also be named rewilding habits, moving me closer to the natural state. I find it to be really exhilarating and quite refreshing. I don't know, Michael, if there's anything you want to share around your cold shower experience.
A lot of the same things that you were sharing, but it definitely, I think, Jesse, to connect with something you were saying, it's one of those habits where I'll see it rise and fall a little bit, but when it's on, it's really on, and it is kind of the first domino that will let all the other dominoes go through the rest of the day. And I just really notice how more mindful I am after a cold shower. So that's what I'll say to advocate for it. And it's just a good bragging rights kind of challenge.
Yeah, it is.
What Auntie Esther has at 95. She's got bragging rights.
Great party trick. No, I haven't missed a day since November 4th. I took a cold shower the morning of the election. And I haven't missed a day since, but I also haven't had a day where I wasn't like, there's always a deep breath or two. It's like, okay, there's some resistance, right? And there's always going to be resistance. There's a concept in yoga called raga and devesha, and it's attachment and aversion. We tend to like the things we like and don't like the things we don't like. And to kind of reevaluate that, it's a good way for me to come up against that which I have an aversion towards, because sometimes it might be something that's actually healthy for me. So yeah, I know that there's a few announcements that need to be made.
Noelle asked in the chat, how long are the showers?
I'm doing 3 minutes. I do 3 minutes. I do 3 minutes and I time
Michael?
it.
3 minutes, Michael?
And then do you turn on the warm water, or do you that's the end of the shower?
No, but that's a good question. Like a good way to start them is to just do like 10-15 seconds of cold at the end of your shower. So take your regular shower, then turn it cold, get that exposure. I don't think I would recommend going cold to hot unless you're going to go back to cold again. It does remind me of how we used to like to go jump in the pool, then the jacuzzi, and then the pool again. That was the best.
Can I share really quick, Patrick? I put a link in there for Wim Hof's breathing method practice, because I did watch a really good documentary on him, and I started doing the breathing and only a little bit of the cold showers. But if I do the breathing first thing in the morning, Michael, like you said, the rest of my day is like I'm on. So that video, you just like breathe with him. He has the cycles, and I think it's like 12 minutes. So if you want to give it a shot, it's just breathing.
It's already,
Wim Hof
you
breath.
put it in there, Jesse? You put it
Yeah,
in?
it's in the chat. I didn't
see it.
I just pasted the link.
Yeah.
But I really like it, and I
Yeah.
found it because I
I
have
think-
a problem with my nervous system, and that allows me to control it, the breathing. And then once you do that, you can practice the showers so that you can learn how to breathe in the showers.
If you want to gain an awareness of your pranamaya kosha, of your energy body, do the Wim Hof breathing. The feeling that I get, it's like there is like something emanating from me. You know, it's just like there's a hissing sound that's around my skull, and I don't know how scientifically to describe it, but I feel my pranamaya kosha. I feel my energy body. And again, it's like you want to connect body to mind, you got to go through the breath. So what it is, you basically take a series of deep inhales, like 40 of those or so. And after the last exhale, you hold your breath for as long as you can. So currently I'm working up to a 4-minute, 30-second breath retention. And then after that, I go into a meditation that is like a deeper meditation than I've ever experienced before, you know. And I really would recommend like giving yourself some time after the breath practice, either laying down in shavasana or sitting in your seat to let the prana circulate, let it all, yeah. And then that's when I start speaking to the universe and doing all my other, you know, prayer type of things. So I
see Tex's hand raised. I want to say one thing. Then Patrick, I want you to conclude, and then Noelle to introduce our guest for next week.
Wait, I have a comment from someone in the chat.
Oh, yes,
Sheila.
thank you.
A couple people have left. They've said thanks, and I'm saving the chat for you. Sheila is still on in Houston. She now has water and electric. But she says, as someone who jam packs my days, leaving no time for structure or habits, I appreciate the idea that inflammation comes from being too full. Time to slow down and incorporate these rhythms. Thank you, Patrick, for your wisdom, all caps. I'm going to say ditto, ditto, ditto. Oh, there she is. Hey, Sheila. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Sheila.
Sheila's definitely a soul sister. So I wanted to say I called my mom and dad, and they, even though their name was on the screen, they left to go eat dinner, because we actually have a family call after this, a Zoom catch-up monthly call.
Okay.
But they wanted to say they heard everyone here, and they really just said thank you for, thank you for listening to Patrick, is what they actually said. So I thought that was cute. So Patrick and I wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you. This is just so dynamic. And Bob wrote something in the chat earlier, 3 generations on our co-creators convergence. Maybe it's the first time we've done that. So that's amazing. So Patrick, I would love it if you could, I know you wanted to say a prayer, so I was wondering, maybe sometimes we like to do some announcements, and then Patrick, you close with your comments and the offering that you had, and then we sort of leave with that vibration. But I really want Noelle to share about our guest Sekou, next week, and then Patrick, have you close.
Okay. So Patrick first and then me?
No, you first, and then Patrick, because I think he has a prayer he's going to read. Yeah.
Okay. You're getting more accolades here. Fumi, John Stewart there in San Francisco. Thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing. Great respect. It was so moving to feel the connection you have with your family. Thank you. And
Noelle, can we just, because this is one of the great things about co-creators convergence, and this is what I just love about people. Fumi, for those of you who don't know, and I should really let Noelle say this, but she is here on this planet to ensure and remind us about peace. So Fumi has the peace poles, and you can get a peace pole from Fumi, and my kids know about the peace pole. We have one at my parents' house.
I've got one
And she
back
plants
there.
peace poles all over the world. So maybe, Bob, you could put Fumi's information in the chat. And if you don't know how to save the chat, I'm going to remind you that you can click on the 3 dots and save the chat. But Fumi is actually just a living peace pole of peace. Wait, living peace pole? Yeah, of peace, her vibration. So thank you, Fumi.
Oh, Karen. I'm so blessed to be here tonight. I just jumped on. I had to come on. And the connection you have with your family. This is very special. And here Michael jumped on too. Just so moving and touching. Thank you so much. And what you're doing, Patrick, I really think it's awakening our divine essence.
Yes.
To me, you're reminding all of us that how things were, the original essence of how, we were all divine and we followed those ways. So thank you for reminding us, and awakening us to that truth. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
More gratitude also from Jim Eaglesmith in Nevada and Reno. And he says his friend in Lake Tahoe did 5 to 10 minutes through the winter every morning. And I guess that would be a cold shower, not brushing his teeth. But yeah, this has just been marvelous, Patrick. I'm so happy that you decided to, take the challenge to be on your mother's show.
Me too.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful. We've had the honor of meeting Patrick. We saw him in Brigadoon and way back when, and then met in New York City one time. We had a rendezvous there, right? We had lunch and Karen was in town and we were buzzing through town. So we love this family.
Noelle, let me just interject because this is something important I wanted to say about COVID and the silver lining of COVID. And I just could cry so much right now. But Noelle mentioned that they took, like a plane, a train, a hike in the cold weather. No, Bob, talk about unconditional love. Bob and Noelle came over to Staten Island to support me and my son when he was performing at Wagner College. And so for me, the themes tonight, just that unconditional love. And what I wanted to say about Patrick, because when I introduced him, and I didn't really talk about his professional career, however, because of COVID, as many of you know, Broadway shut down. And Patrick he'd have to clarify that for me, a Broadway bound kid. He's a musical theater. He's an amazing talent. He didn't get singing from me, I can tell you that, or his dad. So he's a musical theater kid. He's had many leads off Broadway, and I don't know if he's still going to go for Broadway or not, but in the course of that, he also developed his meditation practice and his yoga practice. So when Broadway shut down and he couldn't audition for shows anymore, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he ramped up, like it was, okay, what do I do now? And I think COVID and this pandemic and staying at home is this beautiful engraved invitation to each and every one of us. What am I really meant to be doing in this moment? Where am I really meant to be? So Patrick shifted, and maybe not easily. I got to hear some phone calls with crying and challenging and excitement. So he's now launched this practice as a wellness coach. He's invested his time and his money to train with a woman for 2 years, and at the same time, alongside of that, launch his own personal, coaching practice. And I hope he will go back to musical theater and to singing, because if it were me, and this is a childhood trigger, I always used to say, could you please sing a song? So, if he would sing the last prayer, I would love that. But I just honor you, Patrick, and I honor every person who has looked at what's happened with COVID and said, I think I'm supposed to turn another direction right now. And that's what you're doing here. So thank you, Noelle, for bringing that up. And I know you still have to introduce our guest, and then Patrick's going to close.
Okay, so we are going over a little bit, but it's all, you know, Patrick.
I also
Patrick
would like,
stay
I want to
with
make
us.
a quick acknowledgement. I think Patrick is carrying a message on his t-shirt, which is on his heart. And I didn't see the whole thing, but there it is. And
it says artists striving to end poverty. This is an organization that I volunteer with.
Good for you.
Yeah, really beautiful organization. You could check them out. I'll throw their
name
in the chat.
A lot of us wear our messages on our t-shirts. Democracy 911. It's a state of emergency for democracy. And what's Jesse's?
Yes, Jesse.
Nevertheless, she persisted. Of course. Thank you.
Yay.
I'm glad all the she's do.
Well, I'm going to say my closing word here is that Karen has a habit of raising amazing, beautiful, incredible sons.
Yeah,
I've had the honor to meet all of you, and I think most of them got to meet our dog Boomer.
That's
I don't know if Michael, I'm not sure if Michael was still there. Were you still?
Yeah.
I met Boomer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Met Boomer. R.I.P. Boomer. But yeah, so very beautiful, beautiful family. So I love you all. So.
Yeah, thank you, Bob and Noelle. And the way this works is we have a guest on, and then that guest invites someone.
I wonder who Patrick's going to bring.
Yeah, we don't know who Patrick's bringing yet. So it's just such a beautiful thing. And you know, with Sekou and Patrick and myself and Zachary here, there's just been this, you know, last year with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, there's just been this beautiful awareness that Patrick really brought to me to just deepen my understanding of my own white privilege and white supremacy. So thank you, Patrick, because Patrick was just, I mean, kind of on the floor, brokenhearted, crying at the pain of systemic racism last year. And because of that and our conversations, I became more aware. And then because of that, you know, things dominoed. And then Zachary was even able to just really, you know, be so honest with me about who is this Karen white chick girl trying to talk about racism, and then come to the table and we could all converse. So this is what we're here to do. This is what Co-Creators Convergence is about. Thank you all for being here and for shining and living your gifts. And Patrick, I just hand it over to you to close out for us.
Yeah, so rich and just like feeling super nourished. So thank you everyone so much. I'll just put my email here in the chat along with my website, which I think was put in the chat earlier. Feel free to go there and subscribe. I send a weekly newsletter out. I also have some yoga classes up. All levels are welcome. I teach yin, I teach vinyasa, I teach hatha. And if any of this habit stuff kind of piques your curiosity, piques your interest, send me an email and let's just have a call. And maybe it's about working with me, maybe it's about working with somebody else. You know what I mean? I'd be happy to point you in the direction that, you know, you're looking to be pointed in. One of my big things is I try to point people towards their own wisdom. So I'd be more than happy to connect one-on-one and figure out, you know, next steps for where you are in your own identity evolution. And since there was a calling for a song, I'm just getting better about responding affirmatively to those invitations. So I will share this is a really powerful song. I recommend that you listen to these ladies sing this song, but I'll do my best. I've had the lyrics here, so you can follow along. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round attendees' fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead with love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. So thank you all so very much. Look forward to being in circle and in conversation with you all in the future.
Thank you, Patrick.
I just want to say thank you to each and every person on this call, because one thing I know for sure is that each and every one of you, myself included, we lead with love. Thank you for singing, Patrick.
Thank you.